Hello, this is my third video in a manifestation series, and it's going to be on the law of assumption. My last video was on the flow state, if you want to check that out. The one before that was on magnetism. I kind of recommend watching those before this one. You may get more out of it. What I'm going to talk about today is the law of assumption, and that is made famous by Neville Goddard. He was a Barbadian author and mystic known for his teachings on the power of imagination and the law of assumption. His work emphasized the concept that individuals can shape their reality through focused thought and belief in their desired outcomes. So his most famous work, I would say, is The Feeling is the Secret, and that's actually from 1944. It's quite old. I've read it, and I definitely think it is still applicable. And what it discusses is we tend to think of reality as kind of an unobtainable fantasy, and that we have these things that are kind of outside our control. Well, he wants us to believe that we are the creators of our own reality. And I tend to agree with him. I haven't always felt this way. I would say the second half of my life, I've definitely come to understand the power of the mind, the power of intention and perception and awareness. Not just those things, but just work. And what I mean by that is it doesn't matter what your discipline is, whether you're a dancer, an artist, a financer, anything where you're devoting time to it. When you put work into something, you're basically putting your intention into it, and you're creating outcomes through that. It can be financial, it could be through your relationships with people, it could be a sense of personal satisfaction, all these things. Now, in manifestation, there are techniques to make that happen. I talked about the flow state in the last video. Now, when I talk about that, I mean it as almost a condition that you put yourself in. And once you know how to do that, then I think that's when the actual magic can happen. There are some things you need to realize before you can actually make magic happen. And the first thing is patience. Rome wasn't built in a day. It takes time for any changes to happen. I think people often think, oh, I wish for this thing and it didn't happen. Well, think about all the other things in your life. Let's say you wanted to go to college. How long did it take to finish college? When you really break it down, how much work did it take to actually get to the end? All the assignments, all the tests, the quizzes. Perhaps you had to move across the country or to a different state or something to attend the place. The job you had to work, all those things to get through it. It wasn't fast, and it took a long time, and it took a lot of effort. And manifesting things is the same way. You need persistence, but you also need to learn to be. And I think that's the fundamental problem a lot of people make, is they can't be. They just want, and they can't be. In order to do that, you have to have a commitment to yourself. Everything worthwhile in life requires a commitment. Whether it's a relationship with someone, completing some big project like a novel or a painting, any of those things require commitment, and manifestation is no different. It also requires consistent effort. In order to do that, you may need to change habits, and changing habits is not easy. I talk about it in the last video, and it is, for myself, a daily struggle because your brain is hardwired a certain way. It's very hard to break habits once they're in place. By doing this consistent effort, you will have incremental changes. Maybe you don't eat as much sugar as you did a month ago. That is a kind of manifestation, manifesting a new you. Maybe you haven't eliminated it completely, but maybe you will eventually with effort. And the last thing about it is embodiment. You have to live it. You have to be it. So in order to do that, we have to talk a bit about emotions. Emotions are very difficult to wrap your head around when you really think about it. We don't even really know where they come from, and they're unpredictable, and any little thing can alter them, influence them, change them. The thing to remember, though, is that every feeling makes a subconscious impression. In some areas of magic, they call these thought forms. These thought forms or impressions influence our magnetic field. I mentioned this a bit in the first video. I also mentioned that all is mind in that video, and that the universe is mental. And so, you could even think that the universe has emotions. If you think about storms or stillness, things like that, we also have those things, and we tend to think that we can't control them. When someone has an anger problem, they think that that is just part of them, but it's not exactly. It's a habit that they've developed, some kind of reaction probably from their childhood or from certain events, but that doesn't mean that it is static, that it is permanent. It can be changed. Anything can be changed. And one way to do that is to think about gratitude. Gratitude aligns us to the frequency of abundance. And when you have abundance, you're not lacking things. I mentioned this also in the last video, but what you should really do when you're trying to manifest, especially with the law of assumption, is you should do daily gratitude rituals. You should think about, at the start, just think about 3 things a day that you are happy that you have, that you're not lacking. And it can be small things. It could be as large as things like your health, or the fact that you have $1. Anything. You need to think from the end. And what I mean by that is you need to put the horse before the cart. You need to think about the result before the action in many ways. And the best way to do this is through visualizing. Meditation comes into play here. If you haven't meditated before, I strongly suggest that you learn at least the basics of how to do it. The amount that you can visualize once you're deeply into a meditation is quite phenomenal when you really think about it, how detailed these visualizations can become. There are many guided meditations on YouTube if you want to learn more of how to do it. Sometimes it's easier to have another voice guiding you into it to kind of help imagine it, especially if you don't think you have a lot of creativity or imagination. Otherwise, you can do it yourself and guide yourself into it through your own thoughts. A book that I recommend highly, though, if you want to really know the power of visualizations, is The Middle Pillar, written by Israel Regardie, edited by Tabitha and Chick Cicero. That book will blow your mind when it comes to visualizations. Visualizations affect your energy. They affect your vibration. You can also use them to have psychic protection. Let's say you have anxiety and you have to go into a room with many people. You can do visualizations to conquer that anxiety, to create a force field of light around you. And they actually work. When I first heard about this stuff, I was just kind of like, I don't know. And this was years ago, probably over 20 years ago. And I wasn't really sold on it. But I think it's one of those things that you don't really understand the power of it until you do it yourself. And it's kind of like making love or going on some kind of psychedelic trip. You can't really explain it to someone else. They just have to experience it themselves. I think visualizing things is a lot like that, especially when you realize the power of them. It actually can blow your mind thinking about how much power your mind actually has. If you're interested in this exercise and you don't want to pick up the book, I put a link in the description to the Middle Pillar exercise. You can try it out. Going back to the Neville Goddard technique, here is basically how you do it. You have some kind of intention, a goal of what you want, and you need to visualize that somehow or articulate it somehow. Because people often have this idea that they want this or they want that, but they don't actually know it. Like, for example, let's say you want a husband or a wife, right? And you just say, I want a husband or a wife. If you know the monkey's paw story, you know that you have to be very specific about what you say. In that story, it goes horrifically wrong. But in terms of manifestation, I don't think it's that kind of like nefarious vibe. I think it's more, if you can't see it in its specifics, you won't have it. You have to know it like inside and out. So instead of just saying you want a husband or a wife, you should make a list of the things that you want or you desire. Not necessarily to manifest those things as they are in the list, but just for you to kind of understand what you really want. Maybe part of the problem where people feel like they can't manifest stuff is because they don't actually think about what they really want. They think about things in generalizations. And, you know, if you think about the world we live in, all of the details, thinking about something in a generalization, just, it's almost like watching a commercial for a movie that was based off a book, right? So like the level of detail that's in the book is lost when they make the movie, and then it's lost even more when they make the commercial. And that's kind of how generalizations are when you think about it. It's best to try to find the detail. And once you do that, you need to visualize it, and you need to feel joy about achieving the goal. You've already achieved the goal. That's the part of the assumption, is I already have it. And this goes back to the idea of lack. If you already have it, then you don't need it, and then it will come. So you need to be mindful. You need to speak with intention when you're trying to figure it out. It's good to do affirmations about it if you want to. Repetition is key. Complicated desires seem far away because you're making them far away. Let's say you want to live in a cabin in the country. It will take many steps to get there. Similar to trying to get a college degree, let's say. Could take 4 years, 5 years. Seeing that end result and bringing that forward, visualizing it and bringing it forward, makes it happen faster. You need to do it repeatedly, because if you do it once and you stop, then it's still very far away. But if you keep doing it, it gets closer and closer. You need to see it in your mind's eye, but you also need to associate an emotion with it. Joy, happiness, satisfaction, abundance, all these things. There is a hypnotherapist. I'm not exactly sure what he calls himself. I really respect his work. His name is Paul McKenna. There are several videos on YouTube with his self-hypnosis scripts, and he also has a YouTube channel. I'll put the link in the description. He shows you how to do that, how to bring things closer, and how to like get more confidence or get all these things that you are lacking. He shows you visualization techniques to accomplish those things. So I mentioned affirmations. It's really good to do lists. Now, when you're doing lists, you should use like I am or I have. You should avoid words like hope, try, want, etc. All those words have lack in them. They make it sound like you don't have it and that you need it and want it. You should avoid negatives also. Words like don't, can't, and not. It's almost like if you think of the universe as a computer and you start doing negatives, you are breaking up the direct line of communication by adding another kind of step there. Not just another opposite of what you're looking for in a way. It is almost like a zigzag. So it's best to try to reword the affirmation to make it positive and to make it direct as possible. Another way to do this is to make collages of things that you want and then assume that you have them already. This is a recent collage I made. I have a background in art, but I didn't really think of this as a piece of art. I thought of it as what I want my next 5 years to be. I found the images for me to help visualize that. And so every day I'm trying to kind of like look at this and then remember it in my mind's eye and bring it closer. Neville Goddard has several other books, but the main thing is assuming that you already have it. I do recommend reading The Feeling is a Secret because there's so much in there about the nuance of it. I would check it out. My next video, number 4 in this series, is going to be the backwards law, and that's about all I got. If you want to like and subscribe, hit the bell, I would appreciate all that. If you know someone that would benefit from this video, you can share it with them. If you have anything to say about it, you can comment below. And that's about all I got. See you next time. Take care.